for joining us today for this webinar on the modern workplace with Microsoft 365. My name is Mark Whittlesea. I work over in the London region as a consultant. I have a passion for cloud services. Over the years I've sort of moved in that direction, and I've helped move many organisations across many different sectors over to using more Microsoft 365 services. So what is the old workplace? Well, the old workplace to me is more sort of around more restrictive sort of office-based working, where people will have to be sort of present within an office in order to do their jobs, and generally used to be sort of static desktops and laptops where required, but generally people normally sit at the same desk most days in and out, and generally have to work within that environment. Pretty much where data for an organisation sits is on site, generally on servers or sort of hardware enclosures, and in order for an employee to access that data when outside the office requires a corporate machine, HP, Dell for instance, and they have to have a bit of software called a VPN solution installed on it, and generally that's, for those that don't know about that, that's a piece of software that goes on the machine, and when you hit connect it makes your laptop appear as though it's in the office, and generally all these are around keeping systems secure. The more control IT have over data and devices, generally the more secure it is, and it can be physically as well, where it's actually sit. What that can result in is sort of a limited infrastructure. It's not particularly very flexible, for instance, and of SMEs sort of today, flexibility is absolutely key to be able to work from anywhere. From any device, and sometimes with this type of environment you can sort of have a few risks as well that come along with it, and that can be anything from staff using their own devices because their machines necessarily aren't doing what they want it to do. They find workarounds such as emailing themselves data, whether they copy that data to a USB stick, albeit they know they shouldn't be doing it, but they sometimes do, and data for that reason can end up on non-protected machines that are outside the control of an IT sort of administrator. There's generally, if there's a will, there's a way. People will find a way of getting data off the system if it makes it easier for them, if that system is too restrictive. The modern workplace is generally a more flexible system. Is required in order to allow people to work from anywhere, any place, and generally from any device, and this helps people with their work-life balance and being able to sort of work in a cafe or being able to work from home and still be efficient and still do everything that is they need to do within their roles and their jobs, but at the same time still being able to sort of meet sort of personal sort of objectives, such as being able to be at home more often to see the kids, or having to do the school runs, for instance. They still don't lose too much sort of working time, and people generally are more receptive to sort of working sort of or catching up if they can, if they've had to do other things during the day. So I think it's a big sort of perk as such, a big allowing a company to attract newer people and better people, being able to have that type of environment. Now with the any device, we're in an environment now, or a place where people have to they want to use their own devices, and they want to be able to use a laptop, or they want to use their Mac, or they want to use their mobile phone or their tablet in order to sort of still carry on working. They've been able to work in the office and then carry on with their smartphone or carry on with their tablet when they get home, because it's more convenient for them in their home environment. Just gives them more flexibility. Now generally this does cause an issue for security, but with the new modern Microsoft 365, that's tackled with various parts of features that they've brought into that, so you don't sacrifice security. I think the main part as well is being able to sort of work together better and be more efficient, be smarter, and collaborate. Today's world kind of demands that as such. Gone are the days really of sending files and folders to each other for review, and then someone has to sort of make amendments and send it back, and then someone else makes amendments and send it back to them. Many people want to be able to work on these files at the same time, and reduce that sort of email traffic as well. Makes it more smarter. I think the younger generation kind of want that, and sometimes they like to work with the the latest software, the latest innovations, to be able to be more efficient and smarter in their daily lives. Now, mobile devices and bring your own device. Generally, a lot of people have smartphones. They used to be not as normal as they were, but now pretty much everyone has a smartphone generally to use, and it can be installed in whether it's an Android or an Apple device. They can still install like Word, Excel, Outlook, generally typically used for email. And in the past, it was kind of like you have to sign a form in order for people to like adhere to company policies that are written policies. But there's no such like anything to enforce that on those devices to ensure that it definitely is secure, rather than people taking their word for it. Just to give you an idea on the collaboration part, Microsoft Teams back in April had 75 million people using it on a daily basis. That's active people. And in April alone, they added 31 million. That just shows you that the coronavirus out there at the moment, how much people are really trying to adapt to find better ways of working. Not being able to physically work in an office is a huge problem for quite a lot of different firms. And I think a lot of people had to sort of really bulk buy laptops and change the way they work at the very last minute. And sometimes because of the rush, that you sometimes don't adhere to best practices and security just to get the thing working for people. That cost a lot of money, not people sat there not doing how to do anything. Now, what's Microsoft's plan for SME? Microsoft, they focused a lot more on enterprise. They're very much still there in SME and SMB, but they've always been had that eye on the enterprise side of things. And I think over the last sort of 6 months to a year, I went over to sort of Greece last year at a partner conference, and it was quite clear that they wanted to change that perspective, and they were like bringing new technologies and features out into existing plans, for instance, just to sort of cater more for the SME sort of needs and requirements. They're very much centered around integration with other providers, albeit hardware vendors or software vendors. So being able to have the same experience to any device, like an Android, an Apple, a Mac, a Windows, or whether via the web, it's quite key that when you work from any of those, Microsoft want you to have the same experience. You don't have to learn something entirely new in order to use it. And I think over the last sort of couple of years, what's really missing, which is now being corrected by Microsoft, is having the security behind it to ensure that that data and those systems are truly secure. Before, people were migrating systems like data, files, folders, their email to Office 365 or Microsoft 365, but weren't really securing it. They didn't have access to those security features to be able to do that. It was always at the sort of arm's length of SMEs because of the price. They had to pay sometimes £4, £5, £6, £7 per user, in order to get those security features. Where they're now integrated into these plans, it's a security focus first rather than an afterthought. So what is Microsoft 365? Microsoft 365 is basically a whole solution of individual products and services that come together to allow a business to operate effectively. So here it's that the logo here says a complete intelligent solution to empower employees to be creative and work together securely. The being able to unlock creativity is built for teamwork. Collaboration is the absolute heart of Microsoft 365 and the products that they use. Integrated for modern IT, the integration is absolutely key. You've seen Teams, or those that have seen Teams, the amount of applications it can now link in with, and the amount of files like Google Drive or Box that you can bring into it. It isn't, the old Microsoft used to be Microsoft products only worked for a Microsoft system and nothing else, and there was always this Apple versus Microsoft sort of mentality. I think over the last few years they really have changed their focus on trying to integrate more with these and make it work so people can work from any device, anywhere, and to ensure that there is some intelligent security behind that. Microsoft 365 has a collection of software that you were involved where you could install on-prem. They were your email servers, they're your Windows servers that you typically store your files and folders on. Those are basically been taken and moved to a cloud-based platform. You no longer have to look after that back end of it. Microsoft do all the hard work for you. All they present us back is a web browser to help us configure that and customize it for you, and then for end users to be able to access it. It doesn't mean all of this, the proactivity is gone. It's very much still there, but it's moved to more portal-based proactivity rather than on-premise looking after the physical boxes that are sat there in the corner. And of course, it's all monthly based billing rather than upfront, which is kind of where the world is moving now. So what does it include? So your traditional Office 365 applications. These are your Outlook, your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint. Your typical Office applications you locally install, they are still there. They are part of the application now, part of the service. Sorry. When you pay that monthly fee, you are entitled to download that on up to 5 devices per user. Albeit that's the app on a mobile device, that's a tablet, that's their home computer, that's their work computer. It's quite a powerful bit of kit now. What it also has is the web equivalent of it as well, which I just want to show you here. So let me bring this up on the screen. As this is a SharePoint site, and we'll go on to SharePoint in a sec, but ultimately it's a web-based sort of intranet where you can store files and folders, or you can put a company news on there, for instance, if you're a larger company. But it's a great way of moving your data to a cloud-based platform. Once it sits in SharePoint and OneDrive, for instance, you then have the ability to sort of collaborate with other people, share that data. It has other ways of linking back, but essentially if you open these up, you can see there's a Word document and things like that, and an Excel spreadsheet. But when you open up, just put some desk data in there, you get a whole like Office experience through a web browser, which is absolutely key to Microsoft's strategy going forward. This is all built using a new fluid sort of technology, they call it, and what they predict in the years to come is that the web version will be very much the same, if not more powerful than the local applications that you install on your computer. You have the ability to open it up in the on-premise on your application installed locally as well. So even if you still want to work locally, you can still do that, but ultimately you can still work with that data. There are new features being introduced to it all the time. For majority of people, it will do everything you need it to do. So you literally can close it down and open it up from anywhere. You can go home and then carry on working, albeit making sure the security is there. But then having the ability to synchronize that data to your local computer as well. So here I've got that same structure. Here I can open those up as like it's a file share, for instance, and you can see the little icons here that tells me whether it's a cloud only or whether I can just right click it and I can share, view it online. I can look at the version history and always keep it on this device if I want to keep it locally, if I'm going on the train, for instance, or somewhere where there's not an internet connection. What you also get is Exchange Online. So that's your email, that's your traditional, what most companies move first. They always tend to move email first because it's the easiest thing to move. There's less disruption for staff. They're the same look and feel in Outlook. It carries on working, albeit there's a few more features. Microsoft 365 has some features that work with that when you have it. When you have your email in the cloud. SharePoint Online is, like I just demoed, that's just a SharePoint site. That's just a place where you can store document libraries, where you files and folders, but also you can put some really comprehensive or complicated sites together where you can have interdepartmental sites as well that have certain sort of calendars or lists, so you can really customize it for your organization as well. But for most SMBs sort of to begin with, it will probably be a bit more where you put your files and folders initially so you can start using the Microsoft 365 services. OneDrive for Business is your personal space. That's not where we expect people to sort of put all of their company data and then everyone logs in with the same account. That it doesn't particularly go very well. OneDrive for Business is more your individual space within Microsoft 365. There is a OneDrive for Business client that sits on your computer, and that's the bit that does all the syncing for SharePoint and OneDrive back to your machine. Skype for Business is very much still there. It's been deprecated, it will go, but there are a number of organisations that still use it. For those that have, they will have migrated and upgraded to Microsoft Teams, which is sort of an evolution of Skype with a lot more in it. There have been various webinars on Teams. We won't go too deep on it today because there's been some good webinars in the past, in the last few months, that do go in detail in that, so I recommend taking a look at those at CIT's website. And Yammer is sort of a social media platform for larger businesses, though it works very well for some of our clients that are smaller, where all of their staff are not based on site. So it's a good way of keeping in touch with people and having that social media experience. But very much it's going to go through an overhaul shortly, if not already. so a bit more of a new look and feel, and integrating in with Microsoft Teams more as well. There are a whole number of applications that aren't necessarily in this slide. I wouldn't be able to fit them all on one page. There are so many of them, but these are sort of the main ones. So you've got Power BI, which is becoming more popular now. The ability to sort of inject data into it, and it can give you a really meaningful output, reporting, for instance, like that. Very, very powerful bit of kit. Microsoft Forms, it's an online form platform, so you can give it to a public, or you can do it internally, and then you can look at the results and pie charts and things like that. Very good. Again, we use that internally now going forward, and Power Automate is a fairly newish solution for Microsoft, and it gives you the ability to, on an individual level as well as a business level, put in place the ability to automate certain procedures, whether it's a new user process where someone fills in a form, they submit that form is then used by Power Automate to automatically create the user accounts, for instance, or it could be another HR process where someone completes a form and it goes through certain people that have to authorize it first, and then it carries on the chain. So there are some real business features around that as well. Now, lastly is more around Windows sort of security. Windows 10 comes with it. Windows 10 Business, and that's if you have an older Pro version of Windows 7 or 8.1, you have the ability to upgrade it to Windows 10 as part of the Microsoft 365 Business Premium subscription. Intune is a massive addition to this. There's a lot of new enhancements being done. That's a mobile device management platform, so that's the ability to control devices, endpoints such as laptops, mobile devices, push out settings to them, and also introduce a level of security where you can say the applications that sit on people's devices are only has to be encrypted, and you can't copy and paste out of them, for instance, or inject information into them. So you can still keep the data secure on the individual devices. It's absolutely key in securing the whole your Microsoft 365 solution. Azure Active Directory is purely a directory of your usernames and passwords and group memberships, for instance. Many people will know that to be sitting on servers on premise. You can migrate that all to cloud if you wish, so you can go kind of serverless, so you don't need servers on site. If you need them servers on site, you can operate what we call a hybrid model, which allows you to synchronize your username and passwords from your on-prem system to the cloud. Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop. Now there is a few slides at the end of this because it's a fairly new technology by Microsoft. The plans include the ability to license per user. So generally with Microsoft, you have to license everything. You got to license the software, you got to license the server it sits on, and you got to license per user as well. This includes like the per user licensing. So we'll talk about it in more, but it unlocks the ability to run a virtual instance of your computer in the cloud. And many people can access that at the same time to make it more efficient, and then anyone can work from any device with the same desktop or applications. Very, very sort of nice bit of kit there. We'll come on to that. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection also comes with it. That's the ability to include safe links. So if there are links within Word documents or Teams or emails that are stored in the Microsoft 365 system, it will scan those for known threats. If that URL looks to be on a bad database that Microsoft have seen, it would actually stop the user clicking on them. They'll click on it, it'll redirect it to a website to say that it's not allowed. That is a great way of stopping phishing attacks that people necessarily have clicked through when they shouldn't have done. Phishing attempts are getting very clever now in trying to fool people in clicking on links in order to obtain their username, password, or any other information that's useful to a scammer. It also includes the ability to scan attachments to make sure they're safe, and it has anti-phishing and anti-impersonation as well, so it stops people trying to pretend to be someone else to fool them into making like payments, for instance. Not all 100% foolproof, but it has proven to reduce that quite significantly over the last few years. Now the last one is Azure Information Protection. The traditional way to secure a file or folder is the front door. We will put a permission on there that says that person is allowed into that file or in that folder or not. They can be able to read only, or they can't do it at all, or they have full control. Typically, if someone has access, into that folder, they can enter that file, they can then copy that anywhere they like, and then as soon as they copy it to a device or a USB stick, or they send it via email to themselves, all of that security goes. Now they can then open it up, forward it to anyone. It can be a big problem. So what Azure Information Protection has, it has a series of features within that that allow you to secure the files automatically in most respects, but you can do it individually on files and folders or emails as well. And it allows you to apply permissions such as you can only read that file, or you can't print it, for instance. You can't delete it, you can't do, there's lots of different sort of permissions you can do with those individual files, but the most important thing is when you send that file anywhere or copy it anywhere, those permissions stay with the file. It follows it. If they send it to someone externally, it'll ask them to log in to the Office 365 system. If they don't have a username and password, it won't let them through, and they can't open the files. It's sort of next generation sort of security really, and it's part of the subscriptions that you can buy from Microsoft. So it's bringing enterprise grade technology and solutions literally for the fraction of a cost per user per month with a various tick boxes to enable it. It also allows email encryption as well, which is quite a big requirement for many organizations now. Lots of people have other third-party sort of products and services they use to provide that, but it's actually part of Microsoft now. It's all built into Outlook. You simply click the email, you go to the options, and there's an encrypt button. Very easy for individual, and you can automate that at the email level as well. That you can do it if you send it to a certain domain, for instance, it will encrypt it as well. So very nice sort of bits of kit combined together to make what we call Microsoft 365. Now, what Microsoft have also done over the years is trying to separate what we call first-line workers out. Now, these are people that are generally on shop floors, say medical staff, people in factories that don't log in to computers. They log into devices. They log into mobile devices. They log into mobiles, tablets, for instance, or even just a web browser only. These are targeted those types of people. Why pay the full price of a license if they're never going to use all of it? So what Microsoft have done is, well, they allow you to access it via the apps in on a device, along with the security as well. But you don't need all the other things. So it's generally a reduction in cost. Now, what do you need to do to use these? Now, the first thing you need to do is set up your user accounts within the Microsoft 365 system. And what we would highly recommend is that second-factor authentication, or what we call multi-factor authentication, is turned on. This not only requires a password, but it also needs either a prompt on your phone or a code, for instance, or a telephone phone call as a second means of authentication. If someone was to learn your username and password without multi-factor authentication turned on, they would be able to get into your system quite easily. This is probably saved a number of organizations, especially from phishing attacks where people have accidentally put their username and passwords into websites they shouldn't have done. And many people use the same username and passwords from many different systems, even though they're advised not to. Security first, always look at security. Like Intune is a beast. It has so much to it, the ability to deploy applications, be able to protect data within the applications as well. You should always look around compliancy, like what does a good device look like, whether it's bring your own device or corporate. Get the security in place. That's Microsoft Intune. Get that set up working first. Then you migrate your data or start from data from scratch. Now, obviously, there's a lot involved in migration of data. So sometimes the easiest and quickest way is just to get the accounts, the security set up, and then start using it afresh if you wish to. It's up to you. There's Intune, there's Microsoft Teams. You don't necessarily have to create SharePoint sites straight away to be able to use it. You can just straight away use Microsoft Teams and start using files and folders within there if you wish. Once the data is in Microsoft Teams or SharePoint or in the Microsoft 365 system, that's where the collaboration and the sharing comes in. You wouldn't be able to share a file locally on your computer, for instance, that's not in that system, or on a file share on a server. You would have to keep it in that system somehow. Now, we would also say migrate your email. That most people, I would probably say 80% of London clients alone are probably on Microsoft 365 for email. Hopefully you know about it. If not, you probably are. It's worth checking with your consultant. But if you've got your email up there, then you straight away got email encryption if you are licensed with these license plans as well. Absolute key. There are certain features that will come out for people who have their email in Microsoft 365 that you won't necessarily get when you are having a local email server installed in your system, for instance. Lastly, install the Office applications. The Word, Excel that comes with the subscription. It slightly changes it. You get a bit more integration with Office 365 or Microsoft 365. So it's habit here because they've changed all the plans from Office 365. So I'm used to saying it for Office 365 for many years. So bear with me on that one. So install the applications, get them installed, use the web versions if you wish. There are many ways of being able to access data now. You have the apps as well that you can install on mobile devices and tablets as well. Absolutely key. So how do we keep it all secure? So this is kind of like, I guess, the modern side of things. We really need to look at security first before we start migrating all our data. Now those that are already up in there with their data, I think it's always worth stepping back and saying, actually, how do we secure that now going forward, especially with GDPR coming on board now. The ability to, all the tools to help protect this data are now there. If you have the Microsoft 365 Business Premium plan, it's about £15 a month. If you have that, then you're a bit laughing really. You can have all these systems that you can implement. Necessarily, you probably need the time to be able to implement them and do them in stages that we'll talk about later on. But there's an awful lot of security there. Now, Microsoft Intune is kind of at the heart of this. There's many other bits that come into it, but when I think about security the whole motto is I can work from anywhere, from any device. Well, that scares a lot of people, I don't want people to work from their own devices and share their data and keep their data on their devices, and it's now out of my control. What Microsoft Intune allows you to do is do it in two ways. It's multi-platform, so it does work with Mac, Windows, Android, Apple devices. Now, not necessarily all of it works with everything, but majority of the configuration that you can do does. Now, there are a whole number of them. We'll go through them very quickly here, but you have the ability to protect the applications. Now, we would always advise people use the Microsoft applications where possible on a mobile device or tablet. The Outlook web email app is very good now. It never used to be, but it's really good now. And what these application policies allow you to do is to control that data within that application. So make sure that application is encrypted, for instance. Does it need a passcode in order to go into that application? Can you copy and paste out of that application? So the biggest fear amongst like recruitment companies, for instance, is someone being able to sync their contacts to their phone and then take it away with them. That's a lot of intellectual property there being gone out the door that can be used against them. So having the ability to have people have that contacts and email on that phone would probably help them out immensely, but at the same time, if you had these protection policies in place, you're actually physically stopping them from taking the data off with them. The only way around it was, to be honest, there are workarounds to all these things. Take a photo on the screen, but you can do that in any situation. But the application protection policies, when used, are very good, and they should always be sort of considered from the start. Now, conditional access policies are your front door to your system. It's a load of series of rules, ifs and whens. So if a user is accessing it off a mobile device and it's not enrolled in the system, what happens? Will it deny it? Will it allow it? And there's a set of rules. So you can say compliance is one of these. So you can say, well, what does a compliant device look like? A compliant device could look like has to be encrypted. It has to have a PIN 6 or 8 digits long to be able to get into it. It can't be jailbroken, for instance. So if it's their own devices, there's a chance that people could be messing around their own phones to get certain apps to work. Well, if the system has a little app installed on their device, so you can't get away from that. You do need what they call the company portal app installed on the device, and that's what really keeps their data secure. Now, if the users are happy to have that on there, then you can protect your data for the company on their their own device, without necessarily having to have control of their device. You can tell it that if that device is no longer used or it's been removed, then that data is then removed from the device. So there's lots of really good sort of security features. If you combine that compliance bit with a conditional policy that says the device must be compliant in order to access the system, and you control how that device is enrolled, then effectively you've controlled the security. You can still bring your own device into that system, but you can do that in a manual way if you wish to, or you can just let people do it themselves, but they just have to be able to remediate their devices in the event it falls out of scope, such as it's not had updates installed for a certain amount of time, or they decide to take the pin off to make it easier for their children. Well, as soon as they do that, the device now can't access the system, therefore it removes the data from the device. So it's some really good security things, and this is all new in Microsoft 365. There's a lot of features here that were sort of added sort of last year in 2019, but not a lot of people will probably be aware of it. You have the ability to roll out applications. You have the ability to configure those devices as well, whether it's Windows, Apple, or Android. If they're company devices, for instance, you can push out a series of applications to enforce encryption, for instance. Or whether you want to push out the Wi-Fi profile and the key to all those corporate devices, so they don't have to put that in for them. There's lots of things, like automatically synchronization of data from SharePoint sites to those computers as well. There's really lots of stuff that keeps changing every single day, and you look at it, there's a name change or there's new policies added. It really is something like back in the day, IT changed like every few years, and then it was like every 6 months, and now it just seems to be daily, and it has the ability to control updates as well. So it's quite a powerful bit of kit, and this alone is something like £5-6 alone in the subscription if you was to take it separately. So there's a lot of value there. Now, this is more of a diagram around conditional access. Let's say it's a series of rules, ifs and thens. So if it meets these rules in these people, then this must happen. So you must either deny access, or you must force a password reset, or you limit access, allow access, or even require MFA in order to access that type of data. So if you have really sensitive data, you can make sure there's more security around that data. So how do you stay compliant as a business? So GDPR came in a couple of years back in sort of 2018, and Microsoft really has put compliancy at the core of this as well. There are a series of dashboards within the Microsoft 365 portal that will give you scores. It tells you how good you are against certain accreditations, GDPR or ISO, for instance. It has the ability to do e-discovery and data subject requests. So if all your data, the more data you store in Office 365 or Microsoft 365, the more you can search it. So traditionally, if you had a data subject request on the GDPR, probably a lot of file searching is going on. Certain file servers aren't very good at searching within documents, for instance, and then people did a lot of printing, having to redact, for instance, on it. It's all built in, so you have the ability to search across all the data stored in Office 365 or Microsoft 365, and the ability to redact if you wish to in certain plans, but the ability to search that data and bring it up for review and then delegating that to someone else, because it shouldn't always sit with IT to do that. It's generally it's with some departments, HR or your data officer, protection officer. You also have data loss prevention. What came apparent is a lot of people don't realise that they have what data they've got on their file servers. It could be credit card information, it could be health records. People don't always used to know. They just save it in a file share. If they leave, no one knows it's there. What the data loss prevention does is if someone attempts to send that data out by sharing or by email, for instance, it will stop it. It knows there's a whole number of compliances out there, like the UK Data Protection Act, that are already pre-entered into the Microsoft 365 system. You just have to go and add them in. Once they've been added in, they'll get tips come up on the screen, or staff will get tips to say it contains something you shouldn't have in there. Do you want to do it or not? And sometimes, if it's yes, they'll do it. It's recorded, but at the same time, there are certain situations that would actually prevent them from doing it, because sometimes they don't know they're not supposed to. It's all about GDPR training these days, and you have the ability to keep data for a certain amount of time and delete them as well based on policies that you can create. So there's a whole load of tools there that Microsoft can give you to stay compliant, whether it's ISO or GDPR. I find the e-discovery side of things very useful. The DSR side of things is one of those things that you don't think it's going to happen to you until it does. So does it mean you have to move everything to the cloud? No. You can have a hybrid, you can have cloud only, you can have everything on-prem but still use cloud. You do have to sort of create your user accounts up there, whether you sort of replicate your username passwords up there to keep it all nice and the same, make it nice and easy for your end users, or whether you go fully cloud, which is completely possible with Microsoft 365. We have a number of clients that don't have any servers on site. Everything's been moved to the cloud. So what plans are available? There are a number of them. There was a massive name change going on, so you can see in brackets what they used to be called. A lot of you may know it by Office 365. A lot of those were converted to Microsoft 365 Business. They were just name changes. They weren't necessarily changes to anything within the plans. The only real addition over the last year or two was the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Again, that's used to be called Microsoft 365 Business. They've added premium to the end. £15.10, and pretty much everything we've spoken about is included in that plan. So the value for money is immense. If you take those individual sections and add them all together, you're probably looking at about £25 a month worth of features there, and majority of clients will probably be in the £9.40 area. So for an extra sort of few pounds a month per user, you get access to a lot of features out there. So lastly, we kind of want to touch on Windows Virtual Desktop. Windows Virtual Desktop is sort of a new innovation for Microsoft. They have been very clever. They have taken technology that were used on-premise. So if anyone's heard of remote desktop servers, or terminal servers as they're called, where you remote in to a separate desktop, for instance, to be able to work. A lot of large organizations do that for compliancy because they want everyone to work and have control of that data and have their systems, and typically use what they call thin clients on the desks, the very small computers. This is the same sort of technology but put in Microsoft's cloud. So all of the setup is pretty much done for you. There is some setup involved in it, but a lot of those requirements to have those servers etc. have gone. Microsoft will do all that for you. All we are presented with is the solution afterwards, where we can create these computers. Now essentially at the heart of this is a Windows 10 or 7, because Windows 7, you can put Windows 7 up there. They have extended the time for updates if you host it within their system, but majority of clients will probably be using Windows 10. You can host a Windows 10 computer virtually with Microsoft, and then your staff would simply access that computer via an app on a phone, like the remote desktop app, which many people will be familiar with, or a web browser, so Google, the new Edge, Safari. We'll go through that in a minute and I'll show you what it looks like, but it is basically compatible with all major platforms, even say HTML5. As long as you've got a HTML5 browser, it'll work fine. You can have it as a full desktop experience, or just present you with the application only, and it really fits in with the modern workplace where work from anywhere, any device. And there's certain enhancements in there as well. If you are running your computer in the same physical place as where your email and everything is stored, then you're going to get a much faster experience working with that type of data. There are enhancements coming soon that allow you to do proper video conferencing and increase the quality of it. It's been enhanced so you don't get all the jitteriness and things because it's a hosted machine. I've looked at some YouTube demos from Microsoft on that, and it's pretty much the same as if you ran it on your local computer. They are very, very clever in the way they've done that. So the solution is flexible, it's scalable. Once you set the thing up, you can add more computers to increase the amount of resources available to people very quickly. It's multi-session, single session, so you can have a single Windows 10 computer running up there with 3 or 4 people logged on it at the same time if you wish, depending on their workloads. You can change the spec of those, for instance, within certain guidelines that Microsoft have that allow you to increase them. So if you have data hungry, processor hungry, you can add those in so they can get through that and churn it through quicker. Or if you've got graphics intensive applications, you can add graphics to it as well, so you don't lose out on that. It's all monthly billing, and say the user licensing aspect of that is included in Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So from the monthly aspect, all you're paying for is the compute, which is what we call the running costs. It's the storage of the data in that platform in the cloud, and how long you're running it for. So it's what we call the processor, the amount of memory that it's using. There will be different costs associated with the time. So if you're in peak time during the day, it costs more, and in the evenings it's less. It works very well for workloads that need to be put up there that necessarily don't work very well with Microsoft 365 entirely, where you want to go completely cloudless. You've got applications that work, for instance, on local servers. You want to get rid of those local servers and move them to cloud. Well, you can move those servers there and move the computers there with it. Typically, if you move the data to the cloud and have your computer sat at your desk and you've got a slow internet connection in the way, and you're used to running it all within your environment, Sometimes that can cause issues with such as Sage or other third-party applications. You can now move your third-party applications to the cloud, and then you can move your desktop to follow it so it's got the best performance possible. Okay, what I'm going to do quickly now is just log in and show you. So if you just give me just a second. So this is a Google browser, Google Chrome. So generally you would go through a web link. For apps, tablets, mobile phones, you have a link. You have an app that you install, and you just set it up with some simple links like this, just a URL, username, password. So the first one I'm going to show you is a full desktop. If I log in as Jane, this is CIT's sort of demo portal, CIT Stacks that we call it. Now once you're logged in, you are presented with a list of resources that you are allowed to access. So in this one we have what we call a virtual desktop. This will connect me to an actual desktop that's not running on my computer. So we'll just wait for it to prompt for username and password. And you'll get the same experience on any browser, on any computer that's supported by this system. So once it's logged in, it now fits within the browser, and it actually gives me, to give you an idea, I was messing around with it earlier on, it's pretty quick. I'm not seeing much of a delay at all, and I can use this computer as I would be locally on my machine. Because it's running in the cloud, and we're using OneDrive for Business, it's automatically syncing my desktop, for instance, documents and pictures across. Now this is nothing. I could be running just a simple really cheap laptop, for instance, that's got no power whatsoever, but I'm connecting to a computer in the cloud that does have that power. All that's being transmitted to my machine is what it looks like. Keyboard, so the screen, the keyboard clicks, mouse clicks, etc. Now if I was to log out of this, and there is another view of this, so I can log into another account, give me a second, and it will present me with just the applications only, not a full desktop, because it can get confusing for staff. If you've got your desktop that you work with, actually you do have stuff on there that you do want to use, and then having another desktop to work from, it can get really confusing. So what you can do is just publish the application itself. If you've got an application in there that you want to present, a third-party application or Word or whatever, you can present them to the stuff like this. So I can click on Word, and this will fully integrate with Windows. This is just for a web browser. This will integrate in Windows 10, so you can make it appear as a locally installed application, but it's not. So when they click on it on their desktop, it will automatically launch the back end and then just present them with the application itself. Oh, let me try that again. I think I did that wrong. Okay, so it's let me go in this time. And what it should do, it just gives me Word. And I have the ability here to click on other ones where I can click on Excel. Give me Excel straight away because I was logged into it earlier on. But I have the option the ability to open any application that's public to me and just simply flick between them here. So there's no need to have a desktop, and say I can publish these and put them as shortcuts on my taskbar on my actual computer if I wish. This is all technology that's been around for a little while now, but Microsoft have integrated that into their cloud platform now. So it's very, very sort of good bit of kit, and hopefully that will sort of give you an idea and sort of start the creative juices flowing about, how could I use that within my business going forward. So how does this fit within the modern workplace? Well, the teamwork and collaboration, we've got Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and obviously the Office applications that drive all that. You need to use these Office applications either in the web or locally in order to collaborate with other people and share. Now you've got the flexibility, work from anywhere. Again, the same applications allow you to do that. They just have the same applications installed on many different types of products, such as Apple, iPhones, Android, Windows, Mac. You get the same experience on all of them. They all have their slightly different changes in terms of the way they look and feel, because that's the way that particular operating system works, but the majority of the functionality is the same. And then we've got Windows Virtual Desktop, keeping the data secure, so it allows us to work from anywhere, from any device, is around these using the Windows 10 Intune, the Azure Information Protection. These are all features that will combine together to give you a really good security sort of security platform to work with. Now, how do you get started? It's a journey. It's not a race. It will take some time, and I would always think about security first and how you're going to train your people. Once you get the security, what a compliant device? What's my sensitive data going to look like? Where is it going to be stored? Who should be accessing it from what device? You may wish to be more secure on certain data than you do other data. Pilot it. If you're a slightly larger organisation, get some champions in on it. Get them to sort of promote it within people more likely to take it on board that way, and then move the data in stages. Move your staff data. You can either that be their personal data, so their desktops, etc., into OneDrive for Business, or whether you look to move your corporate data to SharePoint or Teams. SharePoint or Teams, you may have an intranet already that you may wish to incorporate in, or you may wish just to move simply straight into Teams. There are ways in Teams to secure that data as well, to stop certain people going into it. Those permissions still apply, and you can still use the Azure Information Protection to help you with that. I would then work on the advanced features afterwards. So let's get the security work first. Let's make sure people know how to use it. Let's start and get some data out there so people can start to use it, promote it within the business, and then start bringing in the advanced features, unless there is a requirement to bring in those advanced features first. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. If there are anything in there that does interest and you wish to talk further, please do get in touch with your technical consultant or your account manager. Those of you that not necessarily can't as of yet, just please do get in touch with us. Telephone numbers or emails on websites, or if we've already been in contact with you, go through the person that you've been dealing with. We'll be happy to go through any questions you have. We've now got a Q&A, so if you just give me a minute, I'll just bring up the list of questions and we'll go through them one by one. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. I think everyone will agree that was absolutely brilliant. I've got a few questions in here now, but if anyone else has any questions they want to send over, I'll read them out for Mark to answer for us.
Okay.
So initially, first of all, so we have Office 365, SharePoint, Exchange Hybrid, but not Intune. Would we still be able to implement this product? Intune.
So say again, so you got Office 365, you got email,
Office 365, SharePoint, and Exchange Hybrid.
Yeah, so I have a client, similar sort of setup with an Exchange Hybrid. Yeah, so ultimately it's a whole load of features that you can enable in turn. So you can assign these licenses. Nothing should really change. Assuming the hybrid is mainly really used for just management side of things, but it does encompass the licensing for that. But yes, you can look to what I probably recommend in that instance is that you can replicate your computers up to the cloud as well. So you can, it's called Azure AD Hybrid Join. So you can actually present your Windows 10 computers as though it's joined to your local Active Directory domain as well as Azure Active Directory as well. And therefore you can then use the Intune to manage those computers as well. I'm going through the exact same process for one of my clients now.
With that as well, if you want any further information or to talk to someone afterwards, I'll be sending an email out with this recording. So just email me and I can arrange that for you. Next question. I want to replicate an intranet in our office environment. What's the best product suite? Oh, what's the best product in the suite?
Well, I guess when it comes to intranet, you've obviously got two options. You've got SharePoint Online, which is the old sort of traditional way of doing intranets, and it does still work very well. Or you've got Microsoft Teams. I guess what needs to happen is you need to look at individually what the pros and cons of each one, what your purpose is. If you just want something up there that where you can sort of put your HR documents and forms and bit of news about the system, that probably might be better in sort of SharePoint. That's a very traditional way of doing it. Just to give you an idea, Microsoft Teams, if you put it in Teams, it actually creates SharePoint sites for it. It's just a different way of presenting it to you. But there is probably some functionality within a SharePoint site that might not necessarily be there in the Teams sort of way of looking at it. But I would definitely probably look at going down the SharePoint route initially, but also doing a comparison with Teams. to see what's best fit.
Brilliant, thank you. That's actually all the questions we have in at the moment, which I think shows that it was a really informative webinar.
Cool.
So unless anyone has any more that they want to send in now, I think we can wrap that up. And I'll be sending over the link for next week's webinar at the beginning of the week, so keep an eye out for that.
Great. Right, thanks all for attending, and we'll speak soon. Cheers.